The war in Ukraine has entered a critical phase as the United States authorizes Kyiv to deploy tactical missiles against targets inside Russian territory. This major policy shift by outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden marks a departure from previous restrictions, which confined the use of American-supplied weapons to Ukrainian territory, including Russian-occupied areas such as Crimea. The decision, coming in Biden's final weeks in office, adds a new dimension to the conflict, with potential repercussions for the future of U.S.-Russia relations, NATO's role in the region, and Ukraine's efforts to resist Russian aggression. For months, Ukraine has lobbied for permission to strike Russian military targets beyond its borders, arguing that such capabilities are essential to its defense and ultimate victory. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky incorporated this request into his victory plan presented to Western allies, signaling Kyiv's determination to use every tool available to repel Russian forces. Following Biden's announcement, Zelensky underscored the immediacy of action, stating that missiles, not rhetoric, would dictate the next steps. The U.S. has been supplying Army Tactical Missile Systems, ATACMS, to Ukraine since 2023, but their deployment was restricted to defending Ukrainian territory. The new policy expands their range of permissible use, potentially allowing Ukrainian forces to strike military installations up to 300 kilometers behind Russian lines. This shift theoretically puts more than 200 high-value Russian military sites, including air bases and logistics hubs, within reach. However, reports suggest limitations remain. Permission to strike appears to be confined to specific areas of Russian territory, such as the Kursk Oblast, where North Korean troops have reportedly been deployed to support Russian operations. Analysts speculate this focus serves as a geopolitical signal to discourage North Korean involvement rather than a broader endorsement of strikes across Russian territory. This limitation tempers expectations about the tactical impact of the decision. The Kremlin has reacted with characteristic alarm. President Vladimir Putin and other Russian officials have consistently warned that Western-supplied weapons targeting Russian soil would cross a red line, effectively drawing NATO into direct conflict with Russia. Moscow's military doctrine, revised in 2024, allows for nuclear retaliation in response to conventional threats that jeopardize the country's sovereignty. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov accused Washington of deliberately escalating the war, adding fuel to an already intense conflict. Experts in Moscow predict that Russia will respond to these developments with a combination of intensified strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure, particularly energy and transportation networks, and increased pressure on its allies to bolster its military position. Although Russia's nuclear rhetoric remains a key component of its deterrent strategy, the immediate focus is expected to remain on conventional escalation. In Kyiv, the policy shift has sparked a mix of optimism and frustration. Initially hailed as a breakthrough, the realization of restrictions on target selection has dampened enthusiasm. Many Ukrainians hoped that unrestricted use of ATACMS would allow their military to significantly degrade Russian logistics, air bases, and command centers deep inside Russia, potentially shifting the war's trajectory in Ukraine's favor. Domestically, Zelensky faces mounting pressure to deliver results as the war grinds on with no definitive end in sight. While Ukraine has demonstrated remarkable resilience, recent battlefield dynamics, particularly in the eastern Donbas region and around key cities like Avdiivka, highlight the difficulty of sustaining momentum against entrenched Russian forces. Zelensky has publicly called for peace within the next year, but insists on achieving a just peace that preserves Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. However, public opinion in Ukraine remains divided. Recent polling suggests that while the majority of Ukrainians oppose territorial concessions, a growing minority is willing to consider them in exchange for peace. This shift reflects the toll of prolonged conflict, yet it underscores the complexities of negotiating an outcome that satisfies both national and international stakeholders. The U.S. policy change comes against the backdrop of an imminent transition of power in Washington. President-elect Donald Trump has promised to end the war quickly, though his specific plans remain unclear. Analysts suggest Trump may push for a ceasefire that freezes the conflict along current front lines, effectively consolidating Russian territorial gains. Such an outcome would likely be unacceptable to Kyiv, which continues to view territorial integrity as non-negotiable. Moscow, too, has expressed skepticism about Trump's peace overtures. The Kremlin has consistently demanded recognition of its annexations in Ukraine, the exclusion of Ukraine from NATO, and other guarantees that align with its broader revisionist agenda. Any ceasefire proposal that fails to meet these conditions is unlikely to gain traction in Moscow. For NATO and Europe, the policy shift underscores the delicate balance of supporting Ukraine without provoking direct confrontation with Russia. Neighboring countries, particularly former Soviet states like Georgia and the Baltic nations, remain acutely aware of the potential for Russian aggression beyond Ukraine. The decision to allow Ukraine greater offensive capabilities may signal to these nations that the West is committed to countering Russian expansionism, even as it introduces new risks of escalation. Despite the heightened stakes, many analysts doubt the new missile policy will decisively alter the war's course. Ukraine's military successes, though significant, are constrained by the sheer scale of Russia's resources and the entrenched nature of its defenses. Furthermore, the limited stockpile of missiles and Russia's robust air defenses could mitigate the effectiveness of these strikes. From a strategic perspective, the timing of Biden's decision suggests an attempt to bolster Ukraine's position ahead of potential negotiations. By leveling the battlefield, the U.S. may hope to ensure that any talks occur on more favorable terms for Kyiv. However, with Russia maintaining momentum in certain regions and Ukraine struggling to achieve significant breakthroughs, the road to a negotiated settlement remains fraught with challenges. Escalation looms as uncertainty prevails. The introduction of U.S. tactical missiles into the conflict marks a pivotal moment in the Ukraine war, but it also underscores the broader uncertainty surrounding its resolution. As escalation looms, both sides face mounting pressure to secure their objectives before the political and military dynamics shift further. For Ukraine, the new capabilities offer hope, but not a guarantee of victory. For Russia, the stakes grow higher as it seeks to counter Western support while maintaining its position on the battlefield. The coming months will be critical, not only for the war's outcome, but for its long-term implications on global security and the international order. Whether through military or diplomatic means, the conflict's resolution will shape the future of Europe and beyond. Thank you for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis and updates on global events.